right ahead.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Rachel and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. Thank you, Phil, for asking me to do this. I'm always grateful to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. It has saved my life and it has given me a life that is far better than anything that I could have ever dreamed or imagined. I have a group of friends and we have a tribe, and we often say, whose life am I living? And we mean that with everything in us, because if I were to try when I first got sober to write down everything, which I think I did, everything that I would want, right? I would have cut myself so short, so extremely short, because I am given overflowing love, overflowing serenity, gifts, friends. And I owe that all to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I do have a sobriety date. It's 10/10/13. I have a sponsor. Her name's Amy Spain Duncan. She has a sponsor, and now we like to say, and she knows she sponsors me because that's very, very important. I also sponsor women who sponsor women, and that is extremely important. What we can't do alone, we can all do together. And there is hardly a thing that somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous has not come across in their life. And when we get to those certain low spots that are certain to happen, we need someone to hold us up and carry us. And that's been my experience. And so I'm grateful for what this program has done for me, and what it continues to do for so many people. So I'm going to tell you in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. I always like to say before I start speaking that what I'm telling you today is the truth where I stand in this moment. If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, I may have had a different story, because what I know from this program is as we continue, we begin to pull layers off, right? I thought I had motives for things that were completely altruistic. I was just helping them. And I find out later that, wait a minute, like I actually was trying to get something out of that, or, there was a little bit on my side. So the more that I look at my life, the more that, I become a detective in my patterns and what I'm doing, the clearer that I can see, the more that I listen to you guys, the more that I ask for someone to grab that mirror and to hold it up and to allow me to see the things that I need to see. I think the better I get, and if I'm lucky, I'll continue down this road. If I keep doing the things, then it's sure to happen, and I'll continue to have that in my life. I also have memory issues. So the people that were in my story, I'm sure would have a different view of my story. And the people that were around my story would also have a completely different view, I'm sure. But let's see, I grew up with my mom and my sister. My dad always worked somewhere else. So what happened is he would go to wherever the job was. He was an electrical foreman, and he would go to new states wherever they were building something, and there was a year of work, year and a half of work, something like that, and we would follow him because that's where the money was, and we wanted to be with my dad. And my dad is an amazing provider. He is always done that, always made sure we had what we need. I've recently got the opportunity to talk to my dad more and more on a weekly basis, and we talk like up to 5 to 6 times a week now. And what I learned is that there was like 2 years straight that he worked like 14 hours days, 7 days a week, because he wanted to make sure that we had food, that we had shelter, that we had everything we needed. And I love him for that. Because of that, Dad wasn't around a lot when my sister and I were little. So we spent a lot of time with my mom. First thing that I can remember trying so hard and desperately needing was the approval of my sister. That is all I wanted in life. I just wanted her to want me there, and to tell me that I was doing a great job. And that's what I craved. And my sister is 2 years older than me, and my mom was constantly like, "Take your little sister with you," and she did not like it, and she did not want me there. And so I was constantly chasing that as a little child, and she was constantly trying to find new and creative ways to kind of ditch me or get out of, me being there. What I've learned over the years, and what I think for me, is I believe that every single one of us want more than anything to connect. People have different things they want to connect with. Some people desperately want to connect with others, desperately want to connect with a higher power, desperately want to connect with nature, with animals. But that longing is there. And I think that, especially for me, I was trying to figure out how to get that connection. And it started with my sister. So as we were growing up, my dad was working somewhere else, and my sister, I was her tag along, right? In school, I was always known as Rosie's little sister, like, "Oh, hey, there's Rosie's little sister. Way to go, Rosie's little sister." And around the age of, I believe it was 14, maybe a little bit younger, that's when I started to try to change the way I feel with things that were outside. So the first thing was actually cigarettes. And from very early on, from the beginning, all the behaviors that have to do with my alcoholism were there with those cigarettes. I had to steal them, I had to hide. I smoked a cigarette, I got extremely ill. I was throwing up in the bathroom. I couldn't be around my friends. And instead of saying, like a normal person, "Oh, I'm not going to do that anymore," I couldn't wait to the next time to do it. And the same thing happened with alcohol. The first time that I took a drink, I had spent, like I said, all of my younger years trying to get my sister's approval. And that first time that I took a drink with her and her friends, one of the couple things happened. One thing that happened was all of her friends were finally acknowledging me. And they were grateful because I was the one that had found the beer. And I was the one that got them the beer. And my dad and Nancy, my stepmom, weren't at the house. And I brought that beer out. And here's all these, like freshmen, and I'm a seventh grader or whatever. And they're all drinking this beer, and they're like, way to go, Rosie's little sister. All right. And so I got that. And the next thing that happened is, I remember my sister turned around to me and she was like, "You need to shut up and sit down. You're embarrassing me." And in that moment, because I had alcohol, I didn't care, right? I had finally found something that made me okay with what I was doing and who I was. And I continued to chase that for the next 19 years of my life. So my mom was one of us. In her like whole lifetime, from the time that she was 17 until the day that she passed away, she had 1 year of sobriety. 6 months of it was in a treatment center, and she had made it 6 months outside of that. And so what that looks like for children that are basically being raised by her is, she's consistently going back to these treatment centers. And so I remember watching mom with the packed bag, begging dad to not make her go again, and for her being gone for long periods of time. I remember at one point, dad had had enough, I think. And they had gotten a divorce, and we went to go live with my Aunt Sharon. And my Aunt Sharon at the time, she was sick. She was sick with cancer. And I had always heard about, God. I'd always heard about a higher power. My mom and dad wanted us to be able to make our own choices. And I don't really remember them taking me to church much when I was little. They wanted us to, find our own conception of a higher power or our own religion. But I remember the things that mom would say, because she grew up Catholic. And I remembered she talked about, this all loving God, right? That could do anything. And when my aunt was sick with cancer, I began to gravitate towards, asking God for help. And I asked God, to help my aunt to get better. When she was sick, it was in the 1980s. They didn't really have really good treatments for cancer at that time. And she was going through a tough time. And I remember I crawled in on my hands and knees into her room. And I went up to her bed and I put my little tiny hand in my Aunt Sharon's hand. And she woke up. And when she woke up, she started talking to me, and she was she was an amazing person. She went on mission trips, right? She was very loving. She was a very kind person, and I loved her. And she had shown me, what the chemotherapy and what the radiation had done to her. And she was, transparent with me with what was going on. And I remember I prayed so much for God to help her, God to help her, God to help her. And then on my mom's birthday, she ended up passing away. And I was like, well, it was my fault, right? I didn't say the right prayers because, God can do this and God can take care of us. And as a little girl, I put that whole world on my shoulder, that it was all up to me. And I was the one that could have done it, but I didn't. And that's why she died. I didn't say the right words. I didn't do it in the right way. I didn't say it enough times. And so then I had heard about purgatory too. And so I thought that my Aunt Sharon was in purgatory. And the way that I looked at it as a child and what I had heard and gathered, for myself was that in order to get out of purgatory, you needed these prayers, and enough people had to pray for you enough times. And if you gathered enough of those, then there would be somebody at the pearly gates that would be like, okay, you've got 100 prayers, you can get in. And so I thought I had to do that. And so I consistently and repeatedly prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed because I wanted my Aunt Sharon to get into heaven. And so that was my idea, and that was my conception of a power greater than myself. That was what I looked at and what I knew of God. That's not my conception now. That's not how I feel now. My conception is constantly changing, and it doesn't fit in a box, and there's room for new ideas to come forth, and there's room for new miracles, all around me, as long as I keep my eyes open and listen with spiritual ears for the love and the life and the God that's around me. So as I'm continue growing up, I take my first drink, and throughout high school, I evidently drank a lot. I don't really remember it, but people tell me about it. So I'm sure that they probably have a clearer picture of what was going on. And I used to, steal my stepmom's box wine. I would drink at school. I was a very angry teenager. At the age of 11, I had been taken out of my mom's custody because she was one of us and she had a drinking problem. And the state removed my sister and me from her custody. And when they did that, my dad and stepmom came from Harrodsburg, Kentucky, and they came to where we were. At that time, we were in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And they came up there and they got us and they brought us back to Kentucky. And, something that brought me peace throughout the time that, when I was trying to get sober and I was looking back at my own daughter, was that I never once hated my mom. I loved her, and I loved those phone calls that I got from her, and I didn't blame her for anything, and I was always grateful to speak with her. So as we're living there in Harrodsburg, I turn into this crazy teenager that's so mad about everything. I was destructive to property. I was threatening to my stepmom, and my dad is out of town, and they thought the best thing that they could do was for me to not be in that house anymore, which was rightfully so. I was just a disruption to them. And in fact, I was scary. You know, the things that I was saying and the things that I was doing, it was a very scary thing. And there was two younger brothers that I had there. One of them was 10 years younger than me. One of them was 12 years younger than me. There was my little sister, who's 4 years younger than me. My older sister, that was my blood sister that I grew up with. And then my older brother, who was 4 years older than me. And so there's a lot of kids, and they ran a full-time shop, and they were trying to keep themselves and their kids protected. And I went to live with my Uncle Kent. So there's much more that happens there. I end up wrecking cars, like all of this stuff happens. I end up going back to my mom's, and that doesn't work. Surprise, doesn't work out either. You know, I'm still drinking, I'm still doing this stuff, I'm still this like hell on wheels. I end up coming to Lexington, Kentucky. When I was in Lexington, Kentucky at age 19, I met him. I saw him in a hole in the wall bar, and he was bar backing. I remember he had a white 5-gallon bucket, and he was dumping ice into the ice well right there where you make the drinks. And I was like, he's the one. And so I ended up getting to know him. He was married, but he told me, and I'm 19 years old, guys, so don't like think too poorly of me, but he had told me that him and his wife were not even sleeping in the same room together, that they hadn't slept together in over a year. His wife actually had a month-old baby, so it was probably really easy just to do math there and know that that was not the truth. But I was 19, and I wanted to save him, and I wanted to love him, and I was looking for that connection, and I was searching. And I ended up getting pregnant by this man, and I got pregnant at 19, and at 20 years old, I had a beautiful little girl. When I had that baby, they handed her to me, and they put her up here on my chest, and I looked down at her, and I said, "You're the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen." And I wanted to love her, and I wanted to protect her, and I wanted to make sure that she had everything in life. And if anybody would have came to me in that moment and told me that I would cause her more pain, more grief, and more hurt than anybody she came in contact with, I would have asked you to step outside, and I would have fought you, because we can't see. Alcoholism steals a lot of things from us. And I think one of the most precious things that it steals is our ability to be moms, and our ability to be dads, our ability to be daughters, our ability to be sons, our ability to be wives, husbands. And it's sad. As time goes on, about 6 years, I continue down the path. It's getting worse. A lot of things are getting worse. One day, I had my daughter, and I was going to take her to go get a bite. And at that time, I was really, really bad, you know, in my alcoholism. I locked the door. I was getting ready to go take her to go get the bike. And she told me later that what I'd said to her, she was 6 years old at the time, and what I'd said to her is that at 7 o'clock, we're going to go to Walmart, and we're going to go get you a bike. And so what I did is I went back in that room, and I did what I needed to do in order to get well, to go take her to go get that bike. And what happened was, while I was in that room, I had done too much, and I had overdosed, and I was out. And that 6-year-old little girl came to that door at 7 o'clock because she knew what time it was. And she began calling my name. She began banging on the door, asking me to come to the door. Mommy, mommy, mommy. And there was no answer. And this is one of those things that I know without a doubt in my mind, that there is a power greater than me. and that is at work in my life, regardless of whether I know it is, whether I ask it to be. So at 6 years old, my daughter went into the closet, into her room. She got a wire hanger out of the closet, and this is a normal size closet that you would put your coats in, that you would put your clothes in. She took that wired hanger out of that closet. She straightened it. She went back to the room where her mom wasn't answering. She used that wire hanger and she unlocked that door, and she found her mom dead on the floor. Thank God that I had a roommate. She ran and got him. They called 911, and the ambulance came to get me. And I have heard a lot of different stories about what it's like, when you pass away, bright lights, and people things like that. That wasn't the case for me. All I saw was darkness, and I heard nothing. I heard one thing. I heard the EMS person say, "It's been over 20 minutes. We need to get her out of here." They removed me from that house and they got me in that ambulance. And to my understanding, I believe they must have given me Narcan. They gave me something to reverse it, because when I woke up, I was struggling to breathe and I was trying to tear everything off of me. I couldn't see anything, and I felt like I was being pulled into a box about this big, and I saw these long, shadowy fingers that were going over top of me. They were long like this, and they were coming over top of me, and they were pulling me down. And that's what I saw. The best that I could do was, when they got me to the hospital, I demanded to get my discharge papers and that I needed to leave right now. I didn't thank anybody for saving my life. I wasn't grateful that they saved me. I wasn't thankful for the people that were running around doing all the things, making sure that I was okay. I was demanding that you give me my papers so I can leave. And the whole time that I sat in that hospital, I didn't call anybody to check on that little girl. I didn't call my roommate. I didn't call my sister. I didn't call my mom. I didn't do any of that. When they finally released me, I went back home. There's a line in our book that says, "An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature," something to that effect. When I think about that line and when I read it, I think about this moment in my life. What happened next is, when I got home, I had to pass down the hallway. The first door on the right was where that little 6-year-old girl was. She was laying on top of the bunk, and her door was open. I didn't walk in there. I didn't crawl in that bed with her and hold her. I didn't tell her I was sorry. I didn't tell her, "Mommy loves you." I didn't pet her little head. I didn't kiss her little cheek. I walked straight past her door, and I went back to the place, and I did the exact same thing that had just killed me. And that's what alcoholism looks like for me. Soon after that happened, I did get reported to CPS. Thank God they came in. I used to always say, if it wasn't for CPS taking my daughter, everything would have been fine. And that's what I said, and that's what I would have told you. And that's what I believed when I first got sober. But what I know now is what would have happened is I would have grabbed that little girl's hand and I would have drug her through the next years of my life. And they were hell. I'm always grateful for the people that took care of my daughter when I couldn't and I wouldn't, because I didn't know what was wrong with me and I couldn't be well. Eventually, the Department of Justice caught up to me. They gave me some charges. and they offered me treatment. It's like Bill, like treatment seemed wise, right? I didn't really want to go. And I can't tell you why I signed those papers to go, because I had done, there's this, when you go to jail or prison, there's like jail math, and it's 7 months on 12 months, and 21 days on a month. So you can do this jail math. And if you can walk up and get on parole and get out. And I'd done the jail math, and what the jail math revealed to me, my wise self, jailhouse lawyer over here, is that I would be walking day for day in 3 months. Their offer to me was to go to a long-term treatment program, and that was a 6 to 9 month program. So I was going to go ahead and walk that paper out, and I was going to take those 3 months and I was going to lay it on down. That's what I was going to do. But what I understand now, when I look back, is it was the exact right moment in the exact right way. And there was something that happened, and I believe it to be a surrender that I didn't know was a surrender. And I wasn't worried about money on my books. I wasn't worried about the remote and what was on the TV. I wasn't worried about those phone calls, man. I wasn't worried about walking the loop. It was almost like everything was still, and I was just kind of moving through. And I decided to sign those papers, and they shipped me off to treatment. I arrived at the Women's Healing Place on December the 6th of 2013. At that time, my daughter was getting ready to turn 13 years old on January 2nd. That's how much time I had lost. How much time I had said to myself and meant it with everything in me. Come Monday, I'm going to go down to the courthouse. I'm going to petition the court. I'm going to get my daughter back. And I sat there on that phone with that little girl as she sat in those foster homes. And I said, baby, I'm coming to get you. And I meant it with everything in me. I just didn't know I had a disease. I didn't know that I was in the grips and that there was no way out for me. I thought that I could do it, and I meant it. Well, that peer-led social model program introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous, to you guys. It introduced me to the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It introduced me to the 12 steps. And it required me to get a sponsor. I had asked 4 women before I found Amy. And I was sitting in a meeting. It was called Happy Hour. And I looked across the meeting, and there was this crazy lady. And she was so passionate about what she was saying. And she was saying things that I could relate to. And I felt that, and I saw her. And I asked that woman to sponsor me. And I didn't know what that looked like. I'd never had a sponsor before. So I left her these crazy messages. I would call her from the treatment center. I'd be like, hey, they said I'm supposed to call my sponsor every day, so I'm calling you. I don't know what to say. And I'll click and hang up the phone. And she came down to that treatment center, and we sat at this little round table in this little part of the treatment center, and she read page 100 to me. You and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress, and remarkable things will happen. Something to that effect. I don't think that's word for word, but I remember how I felt, and I remember that day, and I remember what that looked like. And we walked through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous.
that facility gave us these packets and helped us with errors and thinking and all of these things. But the true things were the 12 steps. And I didn't know, right? I couldn't see the changes in me. It started happening, but others could see it. And I remember one day, I was so, the little miracles, right? Like the little tiny miracles that happen that just positively reinforce that this is true and this is real. I remember the first time that I had like little spiritual experiences, I convinced myself that I thought I had a brain tumor because this couldn't be real, right? I had to be 100% logical about that. And I was like, probably a brain tumor. There's probably something there that is causing me to see these things, right? But I got to live, in step 3, and that looking back on that, I love to see our little step 3, like people that are living in step 3. It's like I saw a daggone gum wrapper on the floor, and I was like, oh my God, it's God. It's pink, which is the color of the flower that was outside of the door 2 places back. And that guy was standing there that looked like my dad. Like, I was like, it's all God. And it was amazing. It was amazing to be in that place, man. And I didn't know what it meant to turn my will and my life over, but I knew that I was powerless, right? And I believed that something was happening for you guys. I believed that. Making that list, I told you guys before, like, remember when my aunt died, I thought that I had to do all those prayers and do it correctly, and every, it must be done like in this order, and it's got to be 100%, it's got to be perfect. And like, that's what I felt about the 4th step and the prayers, and I was too rigid with it. But I did it to the best of my ability, and I asked God to help me. And I sat with that woman in her front yard in these little chairs, and I shared everything that was on those papers. I also, she had a similar experience with this, but I also thought that I had harmed a lot of people. And there's a lot of people on my harms list that I just really wasn't that important. I had not harmed those people. And so she helped clear that up, and she helped guide me through that. When I got done with that 5th step, it was, I'm so logical and literal that it was like I had a backpack full of bricks on my back, and I had taken it off and I had set it down, and it was almost like I was like floating over it. And I sat there in the front of the yard for an hour, and I remember, like, I can just, her neighbor across the street was getting laundry out of her house and putting it in her car. And there was, I observed everything around me, and there wasn't one thought in my head. I've never, like, that doesn't happen for me. That just doesn't happen. And that's what I experienced with this step. 6 and 7, man, selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate, self-seeking, frightened. Oh my gosh, still here all the time. But I looked at those and they were magnified when I was going through those steps, right? I saw them and everything. I had a little piece of paper, and I would write tallies down whenever I was doing one of them, and I would pray that God remove that, and I would try to do the opposite. 8 and 9, I had made the list. I got it from my 4th step. Had that list already. One of them did not go well. I was in a car with the person I was making amends to, and we still had a little ways to go. And I made that amends, took a couple minutes, whatever it was that I made the amends, and they turned around to me and said, "Is that it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we still had 20 more minutes to sit in that car by ourselves. So the timing on that one, I could have made a little better timing on that one, but I was keeping my side of the street clean. My sponsor always told me that I didn't need to continue to make the same amends to the same person.
Um, my mom, by this time, um, alcohol had stolen her from me. Um, she had detoxed so many times and had so many grandma seizures that her brain wasn't quite working right. Alcohol had had its way with her by that time. And I had made amends to her. And she told me she just wanted me to keep doing what I'm doing. And she was so proud of me. And she was so grateful that I was sober. And then the next time that I saw her, she said, "Hey, honey, I know you're doing the steps. Are you on that step 9 yet? Because I was just wondering about the amends." I had to call my sponsor real quick. And she said, "You can make that amends to that, your mom, anytime she doesn't remember you making it. Just keep making it again." Yeah. 10 walking around, right? We need to walk around and do 10. We need to try to, I like, who was, I think it's Burns Brady. He talks about every time you change locations, you know, do your 10th step and see, you know, if you need to look at anything, if you need to ask God to remove anything, if you need to make any amends, if you need to share something else. 11 has been a journey. Early on, I really got into meditation, and I really love meditation, and I'm a real advocate for meditation. And there's so many different ways and kinds of meditation that it's like a muscle. You got to keep practicing it and do the prayers in the book if you don't know what prayers to say at first. I love those. Step 12 has been incredible. I don't know, man. There is nothing better than seeing the light come on and watch people recover. To see this beautiful miracle like happen before your eyes, around you, and so many different people. Like, it is crazy. And aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky we get to see so many of those? Because I am selfish and self-centered to the core, right? And sometimes I'll forget my own miracle and I'll get caught up in this, oh, Rachel's got to do this, Rachel's got to do that, me, I. But it seems like I can always see your miracle. And then I'm reminded of mine. It's been an amazing adventure. Things that have happened, right? So we ended up losing mom. She was 64 years old. And my daughter didn't come back to live with me for the first 2.5 years that I was sober. During that time, she was living with her dad. And my mom and her dad, they all lived in Lexington. They lived in different places. And one day my daughter was driving with her dad back from somewhere, and they saw, smoke in the sky, and there was a big fire. And as they started getting closer, it looked more and more like it was where my mom's house was. And as they went down the road, they looked over, and my mom's house was engulfed in flames. And they stopped on the side of the road. Her father, Johnny, called me and let me know. And my mom had died in that fire. And I did the only thing I knew how to do. I was call my sponsor and come see you guys. I went into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think it was a Sunday night at 10:30 at the ice house down here. And I waited. I wanted to talk to my daughter. And I sat in that meeting. I raised my hand and I shared out a burning desire.
My daughter called me, and I remember I left the meeting and I went to the lobby area. And I asked her, baby, I love you. Are you okay? And she told me, Mom, I knew exactly what you were gonna do. And I was like, what do you mean, hon? What are you talking about? And she said, I knew you were gonna call Amy because she had been there with me for the last 2.5 years as I visited her. She heard about my life. She knew what Alcoholics Anonymous was. She knew how I was involved, and she knew that I was safe with you. And I was safe with you. Oh, and my sponsees and my sponsor and my sponsee sisters. Amy called one of my older sisters, and she said, do we need to circle the wagons? And I went with my friend, and I stayed the night, and I didn't use, and I got to help plan her memorial. I got to be with my mom's granddaughters as we made collages of all the pictures, and we celebrated her life, and we did a memorial. And it was beautiful because I was there and I was present. And it was tough, but I had you guys. And those babies deserve that. They deserve that. Things will get hard. You know, we all have our turn. All kinds of different things happen. There isn't a problem among us that there isn't a solution for that hasn't been solved. After my mom ended up passing away, my daughter finally came to live with us. She came to live with me. That was exciting. I was grateful to have her, and it was really good for a little while, but it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, because there's this hurt little girl, right? And there's me who doesn't know how to be a mom because I haven't been a mom. Right? I didn't get to grow up with her, and she didn't get to grow up with me. We worked as a team because we are on each other's side. We are each other's biggest cheerleaders. And no matter what, we just want to see the other one do well. And it was tough. It was tough, man. My little girl is 22 years old. Actually, that was who I was just waving to. I get to see her all the time. I'm the first person that she calls. I got to get a bonus daughter. My daughter's sister, Daphne. They had the same dad. In 2019, Daphne and Kaylin's dad passed away from this disease. And for a week and a half, those little girls at 18 and 19 years old, or 19 and 20 years old, sat in that hospice room with him till the very end. 1 month to the day prior than that, Daphne's mom died of cancer. And now I get to be that little girl's mom. And God is truly amazing, because when I was out there ripping and running and I couldn't get it together, Daphne's mom treated Kaylin like her own daughter. She took care of her and she loved her. And I'm so grateful that I get to try to repay that. Amazing things. I can't even describe my friends, the amazing tribe of women. We are going down to the lake next weekend together. It's all female group, and I cannot wait to be with them. Like these are, I know you guys know because I hope you have them too, but these people are incredible. They are so supportive. They are, I will tell you exactly what's going on with you and what you need to take a look at type people. We go on grand adventures, man. We travel all over the United States. Um, my boyfriend likes to say we ride on Amy's coattails because she runs around and speaks all over the country. And next year in 2024, in July 2024, we're going to Bali. You know, like whose life do we live? In December of this year, I'll be graduating with my master's degree in social work. This house, we actually bought this house, you know, and I used to live in a bandominiums, guys, you know. Um, and I have a peace and serenity that is undescribable. I can be a friend to my friends. I can be a mom to my girls. I can be a pretty okay girlfriend. He's definitely a better boyfriend than I am a girlfriend. I mean, I tell people that all the time, but I am working on it and I am getting better. But we have an amazing relationship that's not toxic and not mean. And I have an amazing life that there is no chance that even if I was an alcoholic, I don't think I could have gotten. So I'm so grateful when I found out what was wrong with me and that I was given a solution through these 12 steps, through this program, through this design for living. I think that's all I got. Thank you guys. My name is Rachel and I'm an alcoholic.